Welcome to the AT Pit Crew podcast. This high-energy show dives deep into the world of sports emergency care. Join us as we explore cutting-edge strategies, real-world experiences, and expert insights to help you step up your game in emergency care. We've got the tools, tips, and stories you need to be ready when seconds matter. It's time for the AT Pit Crew podcast. We have the green light in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the AT Pit Crew podcast. I'm Ray Castle, and today we're talking with Ronnie Harper, a leader in high school emergency medicine who's dedicated his career to trauma management and implementing emergency action plans. Ronnie's experience and commitment to enhancing athletic safety makes him a perfect guest for today's episode. Let's get rolling. Dr. Harper, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ray.
It's a pleasure to have you here. I've had firsthand, and for the audience, I've had been privileged and honored to work with Ronnie for 20, 30 years and see him, what he's done at the high school level and during his career and improving health and safety. And just kind of a quick background, if you don't mind, Ronnie, I'm going to share with the audience, just that some of the stuff that you have or things you've done in not just in Louisiana, but nationwide. You've been on the NATA Secondary School Committee. You've had the PASS Standards program, helping develop the Atlas program, have done a number of other things. And not to mention, even most recently for the audience, he's been in the Louisiana Athletic Trainers Association Hall of Fame several years ago. And then this past earlier this fall, he was inducted into the Dutchtown High School Athletic Hall of Fame. And for those of you, I think it's a pretty big honor because he's got some pretty good company with athletes that he has worked with. One being Justin Reed, who was inducted earlier this year, along with Landon, I believe, or Justin, I'm not sure which one. Ronnie, you can correct me. But Justin's a two-time Super Bowl champion.
Landon this class. Yeah.
Okay. Justin was earlier, so I knew it was one of them. So,
yeah.
And seeing that, I know the father working with him as an athlete at LSU and stuff years ago. So again, congratulations and great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Good to be here, Ray.
All right. So audience, this is real simple. If you're getting used to this format, we just like a race. We're in a pit crew. It's improving emergency care, and we have 10 laps to go. So we'll ask 10 questions. We get in and we do a final rapid fire lap, and then we get into the victory lane. So let's go ahead and get started. So with Dr. Harper, one of the things, as I've seen this, and I mentioned earlier, you've dedicated your career, so definitely it was the last 20 plus years improving emergency medicine, really during your time at the high school setting as well. So what initially drew you to focus on emergency medicine at the high school level, and why is this setting so important to you?
Yeah. Ray, my first year as a athletic trainer at Robert E. Lee High School in Baton Rouge, in the third game in the third quarter, at the end of the third quarter, one of my defensive backs went down on the far side, and he was face down when I got out there, and I saw that it was a pretty head related contact, and I went out and started my assessment, found out that he had limited sensation and movement, and said, okay, we're ready to spine board. And remember, it's my first year, third game, and now I have a C-spine that had some significant issues. So the team physician on the crossing side, they came over and began to confront me that I was going to spine board him with his helmet on. And he was saying, no, we got to take the helmet off. So we had this big confrontation in front of God and everybody. And so eventually, as a young athletic trainer, I bowed down to the doctor and said, maybe I don't have this right. And then come to find out I had it right. He had it wrong. But I didn't have enough confidence. When I left that weekend, I went like, never, ever, 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 ever again will I be in a situation where I'm not the smartest and most competent person in athletic emergency medicine. And then I started on a path to try to do just that. So out of fear, Ray. That's what drew me.
It brought me back to a time when I was a student, and I mentioned this in the intro podcast earlier, with the show, or at least, one of my initial podcasts was about that one moment and interest, and I had something similar, and this was a spine injury as well. So I didn't have that type of conflict, but I was a student. I'm seeing this happen. I'm having to be involved in that. So that's a great lead in for where we're going to move today. So, talking about you focused on the challenges, and in high school, and I've done work in high school as well. You see, there's unique challenges. Sometimes you're out on the island. And what are some of the unique challenges compared to other levels of sports that you have worked in, what you see?
Yeah. In emergency medicine is just one part of what we do. And as a high school athletic trainer, you're often involved with developing stuff. Like everything is new. You're always trying to advance your rehabilitation, trying to advance your policy procedures, your equipment, your facilities. And oh yeah, by the way, we got this thing called emergency medicine. We'll worry about that later. And so it's just kicking that can down the road and not making it a high priority as one of the cornerstones that you're going to invest in and focus on. So I think the athletic trainer in a high school gets overwhelmed with all of the things, and it just becomes a slice. Whereas the later on, when you get in your career, the further you get along and the more episodes that you cross in emergency medicine, the more you realize that, no, it has to be like front and center. It has to be number one. So it's just the maturity of letting that evolution take place that a young athletic trainer usually goes through.
Yeah, I think it's, with that, you can't let your guard down, so to speak. That's what I've seen as well. And, there's that undertone that I think everybody shares what you've gone through, do that as well. So, going to the emergency response side, we know that it requires a quick, and I don't want to say effective, but also, I may say, not only replace quick, but efficient and effective response can really make a difference in an emergency situation. So how do you approach creating and implementing the emergency action plan, and how you did that in high school settings?
Early, again, it was like a piece of paper. It was 3 or 4 pages long. It was sitting in a drawer, and I said, I have something. And I just basically were copying templates that other people had and said, okay, I've got an emergency action plan. It's got some phone numbers. It's got some entry gates, some basic stuff. And then I just always went like, there's got to be more to this. And as I began to learn and grow, there is a lot more to emergency action planning, and it's such a multifaceted, complex entity. So it was a matter of building it like you build a house. You have to build the infrastructure. You got to put on the walls. You got to put in insulation. You have to begin to put in the flooring. There's so many layers, and it doesn't happen overnight, but you have to understand you're building something. So once I had that mindset, then it was just a matter of every opportunity I could to put another brick on or lay another tile, I would try to make my emergency action plan come alive and be real. And it takes a long time, but it also takes a commitment to doing that. So it's a process.
I guess you would say, like that old phrase, like Rome wasn't built in a day, but you have to keep laying bricks, right? So
yeah, but emergency action plan is that same mindset. Yeah.
So, as I was listening to you, you mentioned about trauma management, and I want to just for the audience, there's trauma management and there's medical management, and those are two different medical emergencies and trauma emergencies. So, for this, I want to focus a little bit on the trauma side, because that requires a heavy mix of training, readiness, and often creativity. And I think that gets into the pre-planning side, where you do your scenarios. So can you, related to, or at least unusual situations, so can you share a story where your emergency training made a difference in a high school sports setting, or like in your having to deal with where it really came into play? You leaned on afterwards, you said, wow, I'm glad we did that deliberate training, and now we're better moving forward and continue that process.
Yeah. Absolutely. It was on a Thursday afternoon before a Friday game, and we were finishing up preparations for an away game in varsity football. Freshman football was going to do walkthroughs that day in helmets and T-shirts because I was ready to go, but they were still out on the field. So I'm just sitting in my office, and they know where I'm at. I'm not that far. They're in helmets and shirts, so I'm not out there. And somebody come barreling into my office saying, Dr. Harper, you got to get out here. This athlete is face down. He's not moving. So wait a minute. Wait, you're in helmets. And I go out there. He's with the offensive lineman, and he's face down. And I ask him, this out of all the people off spine board, this is the one athlete that had nothing. Can you feel this? No. Can you move this? No. And I went like, what are y'all doing out here? Well, he was doing an offensive pull drill, and the coach had a dummy, like a dummy shield in his hand, and he was supposed to hit it with his hands, but he ducked his head and rammed his head straight into the coach's dummy shield and went face down and couldn't move. And so once I got that picture and I knew what I was up against, I waited on EMS to arrive, and this was an offensive lineman. He was rather big. He was probably 6'2", 6'3", 250 pounds, and this was before scoop stretchers were really like in the thing. And so we had two options: log roll. We just got through practicing the 6-person lift as an option, and this was one of those cases where we felt better to do a 6-person lift, really 8-person lift by the time this got here. Anyway, when the paramedic got there, I convinced him, let's do a coordinated lift with the coaches and the adults that were there. And the paramedic went like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And he had never done one before, but I was now at the C-spine, holding C-spine. I was in command. I told the paramedic what was going to happen, and he felt my confidence and fell right in line. And so that was an example of my preparedness from that initial scene, that I would never be in that case again. And whenever somebody shows up, I'm in charge and I'm large, and I'm sort of going to direct you, and you're going to follow my lead based on my knowledge and my experiences. So, yeah.
So part of that just involved just slowing it. You just slowed the process down. I mean, I know that, like, I've had, in my experience working, riding with the ambulance, and you're either there. His or her reaction was just, we're used to having 2 of us, or may get some assistance as needed to. Now you have a crew of having 6. They don't do it that often, probably. But that's a great example of utilizing the lay personnel and already having that in plan for that. So, which gets in kind of the prevention side. Next question, or next lap, so to speak, is think about preventative measures, and it's more or less being proactive measures, I guess. So, think about how sometimes they're overlooked until something serious happens. So, what advice would you give schools looking to improve their emergency action plans before a crisis occurs?
Yeah. Practice the basics, practice the fundamentals, just like a coach does with their sport, where they every day in practice, they go back to the fundamentals every single day, whether it's a SAM splint that you need to put on, or whether it's taking a face mask off, or whether it is doing CPR, it's drill and practice. So whatever your core that you deem to be, it doesn't need to be once a year. It needs to be on a regular scheduled basis, that you get your stuff out and you go over a review of what all the parts that are needed. So yeah, come up with a plan and focus on the fundamentals.
And that plan's written. I'm assuming under the work y'all, you would have it written down as to when it would occur, correct? At least having delivered that schedule. That's
the goal. And for us, quite often it was on those Thursdays that we would find opportunities to review something very basic and simple with the staff. Would be the opportunities that I would try to do during football season.
So, Dr. Harper, you've been an advocate, and I've seen this firsthand. I know many who are listening on the show who have seen the impact of your advocacy for training and preparation in the high school setting in Louisiana and across the country. what types of specifically question is, what types of training or drills do you think should be mandatory for high school athletic trainers? And not just them, but also I would expand to coaches or their athletic personnel that they're part of their medical team.
Yeah. So toward the end of my career at Dutchtown High School, I taught the basic EMT class, or the EMT class, and the development of that profession was a lot different, not a lot different, but it approached it with a little bit different mindset than I'd done as a program director of athletic training at Southeastern. And it was, it had just a different level of preparation toward an outcome. And so I began to really try to transfer that over to the athletic training world when I would teach athletic trainers. And that is having your core fundamentals down and then moving into an integration of those skills, like bringing 4 or 5 of those skills together in a mini mock or a scenario. And then the next phase would be to put those into a full scenario. And then the next phase would be to do the full drill and practice. Quite often we would just jump all the way into the drill and practice like the major event, and we haven't progressively developed ourselves. So that is that's sort of the mindset of the way that I think athletic trainers need to take when it comes to the preparation, and then start to implement those strategies in a consistent basis.
So it's a great lead in to what I want to we want to ask you about now, is really think about emergency situations. And we've already discussed briefly about how, it demands that quick, not just quick response, but a collaborative response, those on site and then with EMS or fire coming on site, from already coming into the situation. So how did you work with coaches, school administrators, local EMS teams to ensure that everyone understands their role in an emergency?
I'll start with the local EMS team. Used to, I just take them for granted. Then I went like, okay, I got to be more deliberate about this relationship. And I was having a conversation with a EMS personnel before the game, and he just got bold and said, hey, what exactly does an athletic trainer know in emergency medicine? And I went like, I thought you already knew. I made an assumption you knew what I know and what I do, and he didn't. Then I had a conversation with my doctor, my team physician, not long after that. I said, do you know what I do? Do you know what my scope is? And he went like, not really. And I went like, wow, like until I asked them, do they understand what I know and what I can do in emergency medicine? My local EMS didn't know. My team physician really didn't know what an athletic trainer can or cannot do. And that started the process. And then when something really bad happened at my school, one of my administrators said, well, Ronnie, that's not in your responsibility. And I'm like, oh my goodness, they don't even know what I do. And so it was education. Like I have to be more proactive at education with all of these and make no assumptions. So lesson learned.
So is it safe to say that not only were they asking you questions about what your role as an athletic trainer was, but in part, you started asking questions about really better understanding what those respective providers, what their knowledge and skill base was, and what their or a limitation of scope, like, for example, paramedic versus EMT, scope of practice within what their protocols, what they can and cannot do. Is that pretty, I'm assuming that occurred as well.
One of my physicians on the sideline was an ER physician. I said, oh, that's great. That's awesome. But what's his scope? Well, what can he do? It's great to have an ER physician on your sideline just for the management of stress, but he doesn't have all of his tools in his toolbox to operate. And then he's operating with so having those conversations, absolutely. I just took more aggressive approach at talking and learning about what people know and what they don't know and what I know and what I don't know, and not just make big assumptions just to attend an event. And it was very eye-opening when I really began to be aggressive in that tone.
I think you've talked to EMS personnel, and I've done the same as well. And that's a great point that you made. Understanding how you've learned from them, and I know I've done the same thing as well. Just to ask even what for an emergency physician, what they do, and and how tricks, even tools and tricks of what they do it's carried over. You and I've talked about this before, is what we do from a practice standpoint as well. So I think it gets into, we underestimate or maybe sometimes overestimate. But then it's what's really kind of, I want to change gears a little bit on that kind of that framework of looking at high school athletes. So in their mindset is sometimes, I think we've seen this, is they may underestimate the severity of an injury. And so what has been your approach your approach you developed over the years in educating young athletes about the risk and importance of reporting symptoms of injury? And I think maybe even tag into that, maybe for athletes and parents, about importance of reporting symptoms.
Once I figured out, and it doesn't take much to figure out the severity of a injury. However, they'll be in denial. So here's what I use. Here's my go-to. Look, this is my pitch. It's probably really not that bad, but I'll tell you what. Let's just go rule out the bad stuff, and then we can get that behind us, and then we can get you back out there pretty quick. And once they heard that, then they went like, okay, he believes it's probably not that. And in the big scope of things, it's not that bad. You're not dying. You're not losing a limb, but it's still pretty significant. But let's go rule out the bad stuff, and then we'll get you back out there as quick as we can. And then that would relieve everything, and then they would be more willing and cooperative to move to the next step.
Yeah, and that even conversation probably changes a little bit between, let's say, a younger pediatric, say 11 or 12-year-old versus a 17-year-old, right?
Yeah,
does that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all based on the reading. It's all based on the reading of the parents, because the parents are the controlling factor. And I always ask the athlete, which parent am I going to call, the mom or the dad? 99% of the time they would say, call my mom. And that would give me a clue as to how this thing's going to be processed from the beginning. And then once I got mom on the phone or started talking to mom, that was harder and to figure out where mom is coming from. But eventually I got a pretty good feel for how to handle the mom in cases like that. But
I think part of that, leading in is a great segue into this. This next question is about how you prepare yourself for an emergency, and until otherwise ruled out, it is you're having what you may think is not, we think is not an emergency. In, like you mentioned, I think in the parents or athlete, they may think it's a dire emergency. So you have to understand that's a mental component for that. It's not so much mental as much as procedural. So how do you help other athlete trainers in your experiences stay calm and focused during high stress situations? And what you've done, you developed over the years to stay, I know I've heard you say it's time to cool, calm is cool, and other types of processes.
So I have a pet peeve about this, and that is when we go into stressful situations, usually my student aides, coaching staff, another athletic trainer are behind me, are around me. My pet peeve is your facial expressions and your tone of voice have to be stable and consistent. If I get any clue that your tone of voice or your facial expression is anything other than generic, then I will turn and dismiss you immediately, because you can disrupt an environment just by somebody's eyes going up or somebody covering their mouth or their hand trying to not say something. And so I would have to prep my staff to say, look, when this happens, I'm telling you, like I will ask you to leave immediately if you don't bring to that table no emotion whatsoever. It's hard enough to handle the individual. It's hard enough to handle my own emotions. I cannot manage incompetent people that can't control their emotions as simple as what their eyes or face will do.
That's just controlling the situation. It's as simple as it gets. So we have 2 laps to go discussing challenges in high school trauma and emergency responses with Dr. Ronnie Harper. So Dr. Harper, you've seen firsthand the positive impact of well-executed emergency response, and not just for the school, but at a school district level that you had worked with and developing over the years. And I might say I've seen that plan, and it is impressive from a how you all coordinated that and developed that. So moving at school for schools and athletic programs just starting to build their emergency plans, what would be your number one piece of advice to get them started on that process?
Well, this is easy, Ray, and it's very simple. Your medical director, they have to be dialed in. They have to understand the responsibility. They're busy. They got lots of wheels spinning, but you have to start there and get buy-in, get input, because when you march this thing forward, you're going to hit resistance along the path, and you better have your medical director right beside you or in front of you leading the charge, or you will spin your wheels to no end, wasting a lot of time and a lot of energy, because the buck stops with the medical director. So he needs to understand that his name, his reputation, his license is the one that's on the line here, and that you are empowering that particular medical director with the resources to be in a very good position to handle emergency situations. So that's my advice: is you gotta line that up first, and then keep it positive and encouraging and motivating throughout the whole process.
So just to kind of add on there, so if you already you go into I'm a first year athletic trainer, I'm going into a new job, school. There's already been a physician there. They may have some other, maybe the sports medicine clinic, physical therapy clinic. They've been working collaboratively. They're part of that group. Would you encourage them getting with the physician first and then bringing those folks on board and trying to finalize that as a team, as a formalized team, or I guess a better review team, and then moving forward?
Yes and yes. Cultivate those relationships. If they don't get excited about it, then go find an advocate who is excited about it, who then can help be your advocate back to your medical director, like an ER physician, maybe a fire chief, maybe a school nurse, maybe somebody that is an advocate with you in this space, that then helps to rally that medical staff, that medical director, to say that this is an important element of our overall healthcare plan, and that we need to do this first class and do it right from the beginning.
All righty. So, Ronnie, we are an audience. We are in the final lap. This is the speed lap. It's full throttle ahead. I've got 5 rapid fire questions. Ronnie, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. Favorite piece of emergency equipment in your kit?
SAM splint.
Okay.
SAM splint.
Okay. What's your go-to method for staying calm under pressure?
Keep repeating the same question. If you don't know what the next one is, just repeat the last one in a different way until your brain catches up.
Okay. So if you weren't in emergency medicine or being an athlete, I'll say an athletic trainer, what would you be doing?
Business. My dad owned and managed grocery stores, and that's probably where I would have been.
I did not know that. Your dad did that. And so one piece of advice for new high school athletic trainers they're going to be experienced going in, or they are a new fresh out of school and they're going into that job position.
Same way I led off with this whole thing is the first year, third game, overwhelmed in an emergency situation. Get your ducks in a row long before you are placed in that situation. So you be the expert and invest in emergency medicine. Okay,
last one. What's a fun fact about Ronnie that the audience may not know?
I really like studying genealogy, and I found out that there's a very high likelihood that Pocahontas is my great grandmother somewhere down.
Okay, we may have to get you back on the show to walk as a fun episode of genealogy, or even athlete training genealogy for that matter. So thanks, Ronnie, for sharing your insights on trauma care and emergency planning in high school athletics. Before we wrap up, what would you say is the one thing every athletic trainer should remember when preparing for emergencies?
If it can happen, it will happen. When you enter an arena, you walk in and you say, what's the worst thing that could happen today? And it will ramp up your focus. Do not go into an athletic arena, if you're in charge, and say, hey, this is a pretty cool event. I like athletics, but you have to enter in and say, what's the worst thing that can happen, and am I prepared? And that should scare you, and you should be scared, and you should let that fear drive you to be better in emergency medicine.
Thank you. So that's it for today's episode with Ronnie Harper. We hope you've gained some valuable insights into high school emergency care. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode. Until next time, we are out of here.
Thank you for joining us on the AT Pit Crew podcast. We encourage you to like, subscribe, and join our community. For more information about this podcast show, visit www.actionmed.co/podcast. This show is a production of Action Medicine Consultants, LLC. The medical information provided within this program reflects the opinions of the hosts and guests and is intended for informational and educational purposes only. It should not be considered as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment.